In this episode of Shift Happens Catalyst Conversations, I have somebody very, very special who's like across the ocean, across the time zone, and also I would say across generations. I'm so happy to talk to somebody who made very courageous decision at older age. When I grow old, I want to be like her because she did something super super cool, becoming an influencer in old age. Retirement is not the end of your life, it's just the beginning. She will live to 100, she will do so many cool things in her life. Enough about me, enough about how amazed I'm at this person. I just want to hear this from Sharon. So Sharon, tell us, what was the big shift and transformation that you made in your life, this becoming an influencer thing? What is it about?
I felt invisible my whole life, my whole career. I actually wanted to be invisible as a child because I thought maybe it would be safe. There had been sexual abuse going on in our family for a long time, and my older sister had a baby by my dad. And
Wow.
I said hundreds of times, thank heavens he keeps his hands off me. And I thought, well, if I focus, determine where I was going, get good grades, be obedient, and don't rock the boat, maybe I'd be safe. And it worked pretty well. It wasn't until I retired that I realized maybe I'm still invisible, but I felt it down at the bottom of my gut. It was, the thing of feeling seen and heard. I often would speak up for somebody I thought needed help being heard, like on your resumes. I kind of enjoyed bringing out some of the things that you might take for granted about yourself, but not everybody can do that. So I would spruce up resumes to more appropriately highlight your talent. And that felt pretty good to me. But at the same time, it takes a lot of courage sometimes to speak up, especially when you're in front of some high ranking people, whatever. And I distinctly remember I was working at the phone company, and for some reason, 10 or 15 of us people had a meeting. Somebody set up a meeting with our top guy there in our location. And he was asking us, no, we were to ask him all kinds of questions. What would you like to ask the big boss? I sat there and I kind of like, wonder if he has some questions for us. It kept kind of bugging me, but I never got the courage to actually ask him a question. But I remember that so strongly. I wish I had the courage, the guts, to ask him what would he like to know from us. Because the worker bees, the employees are closer to the problems, actually. So
Mm.
so anyway, I did one thing that kind of showed up that I might could be an influencer is I did take Dale Carnegie courses, and I was active for a while in Toastmasters. In fact, I went to one of their conferences in Tennessee, I guess it was, Nashville, Tennessee. And what an experience that was. That was such a delight to hear good speakers. And I've been to a couple meetings here locally, but it seems like they meet at a time that isn't really great for me. But even before I left my job at the phone company, I had a chance. No, no, that was at Boeing. I was within 2, 3 weeks of retiring, and somehow my boss asked me to say a little bit about the project I'd been working on. And there were going to be supervisors and managers, and I don't know if there'd be a director there or not, but I had the guts to say the honest truth about, because sometimes managers are so focused on what they're trying to accomplish that they don't see what's actually happening or where it's a little challenging for the workers. Anyway, it wasn't until I retired, and at the same time I retired, I also started coaching school classes because what I had been doing at Boeing was empowering people. I consider myself a natural facilitator. And a facilitator is somebody that helps make things work out for other people. So I thought coaching would be kind of a natural progression of that empowerment theme. And the first thing they taught us was to write our essence statement. Now, teach others the same thing, but I call it spark, your inner spark.
Mm.
What as we finished writing our statement, sharing it with each other and trying to understand it, they had us stand in a circle at the end of the class, and we were to read our essence statement to each other. I kind of noticed some of the people, as they read their statement, they were kind of sniffling, and I thought, what's that about? And as it came my turn, nobody had ever asked me to define my soul before. That's what it felt like. So here's what I read that day: I am precious jewel of wisdom. I am colorful collaborator, motivator, and learner. A tranquil, authentic, and pure inspirer. I light fires. I want to light everyone's fire to know that they can live from their soul, their GPS, their DNA. It's inside of us. The reason why we're here and what we have to give. But something came in the mail about that same time that I thought, oh, you got this wrong. This isn't me. You made a mistake. And called me an influencer. Really? Really? Shortly after that, I guess it was a few months, that I got a call from New York City, and they wanted me to be on a podcast. They kind of had to do some talking because, well, I had collected words of wisdom over the years, and I also make these little art blocks. And this one says, "Feel the power that comes from focusing on what excites you." And that's something that Oprah said. Well, okay, so that's a word of wisdom. And I like to sew and I like color. And that all kind of came together as, yeah, I might be an influencer. I had a file of all these sayings. Every time I'd read a book, I would find some nuggets that was small enough that fit on a block. And so I went and did that podcast. And they hadn't aired it more than 4 hours, and here they're calling me up again and saying, well, we think you have something to say, and we think that you've got energy, and would you like your own podcast?
Wow.
Yeah, I guess I could try it. And I did, like Silja's doing, bring in guests. And so we each week I would, create some questions and find somebody to talk to. And that another process of the journey was, one of the last people I interviewed, I wanted to talk to somebody who could speak on courage. I had to ask 10 or 12 people, who do you know that can talk on courage? The problem here, if people don't know courageous people, there's a lack. So the person that I was finally connected to was a highly interesting guy. In fact, I saw him around Thanksgiving, I think. He's now 91, and he was a soccer umpire, and he was for like 30 years. And he was a guide on the railroad around Montana, I think it was, he said. And he's just done lots and lots of things, but he's got his doctorate, and he's also Reverend. So you can call him Reverend Dr. Robert Nicholson. I'm not sure that he's written any books, but he's a fascinating guy. In fact, I ran into him at a restaurant, and he just talks to everybody real easy for him. So he was paying the restaurant chef a compliment on how good the barbecue was that day. And I thought, well, I think I'll talk to him as I getting ready to leave. And when I sat down and was visiting with him a little bit, I said, Isn't your name Bob, Robert?" "Yeah, it is." Well, so then we realized that we knew each other already, and we had just come across each other at a restaurant. So, but
Mm.
courage. So I set up a page on Instagram as Sharon_Queen of Courage. And I started out by holding out my little art block and saying why this was important to me and what you can learn about it too. Be encouraged. One of my favorite is, worry is a misuse of imagination. Yeah,
Mm.
spinning your wheels and going nowhere.
True.
So one of the phone company had transferred me down to Tampa, Florida, and 3 months into it, I thought, I got this. This is gonna work out. But one of my friends up here had said before I left that, well, give it 6 months before you decide to turn around and come home because you're homesick. I thought, well, I've got this. This is gonna work out. But by the fourth month, I had hit a wall. And I was getting sad and depressed a little bit, I guess. So I got out, since I like to read and study, and I got out my Bible concordance and looked for those things around courage and inspiring myself. And I found several verses in Joshua chapters 1 and 2 about do not be afraid, be of courage, be of good courage, do not be afraid. I gradually started stomping my foot and saying, I refuse to live my life based on fear. And it looks pretty good too, because that was like 30 years ago. And maybe I should have a little more fear in my life than what I'm living by. But so many, I mean, I will never forget the day that I heard a TV ad talking about when you go to your rheumatoid arthritis doctor. What about if I go to the rheumatoid? My younger sister has a bad case of rheumatoid arthritis, actually. But for them to imply that I'll wind up in a doctor's office, I have never spent a night in the hospital. Never. I've had cataract surgery, but that's a day process, and never had diabetes. In fact, I've had a couple instances. I was about two, I think, when I was working second shift at a bank, and it was, I think, probably September, October timeframe, and the flu was starting to go around. And so one night at work, I was starting to feel squeamish, kind of nauseous. That would be a good word. And that went on for about 10 minutes. And I said, shoo, go away. It's not going to bother me. It did.
Yeah, it feels like you don't let the negative stuff get to you. You're just refusing to have it, and this is also why you don't have it. I'm quite similar, so I'm like, I'm never sick. If the flu comes, I'm like, I'm not having it. This is not my life. This is not coming, and it's not coming. So I guess I feel that also if we decide that we only have the best things, we only have the most amazing life, then we just have it. It all starts with the mind. And I guess somebody like you, because you also know a lot about behavioral science, you really knows how it works and how your mind works as well. You are basically changing your behavior by changing your mindset and by deciding consciously, yes, I'm having the best
Yeah.
only.
Yeah. So when it's typical that people can start ruminating about, oh, I wonder if that's going to turn into infection, or I wonder if that's going to make me sick. I might have to stay in bed tomorrow. No way. In fact, I have a book I'm listening to from the library right now on the wisdom of cells. And the book that Bruce Lipton wrote a number of years ago, I just really was amazed by it. It was called The Biology of Belief. What we believe, what we accept, what we be fearful about, your cells know and hear that. Your body, in fact, okay, so here's, instead of expecting pain and infection and colds, even in the pandemic, I think I had a cold for about 3 days. Didn't take the shots. I'm not getting that. Go away. See, what was I starting to say? Power of belief. Okay, so Bruce Lipton, there was some before that, though. There's about three people I know right now that are teaching us to heal ourselves. And Bruce Lipton is one of those. And it was really easy reading his book because he put it in just everyday terms, and yet he's a doctor. I think somehow the lesson came to him, something around a book. He's got a book called The Honeymoon Effect. Once you get married and then go on a honeymoon, everything's bliss. That bliss can keep going on and on and on and on. Why would you want that to stop? Anyway, not living my life based on fears is my method of having mental strength. I agree that it's tough to control your thoughts, but when you control your thoughts, you control your life.
Yeah. So this is how you got into the influencer thing as well. You just decided and you went for it. You didn't listen to anybody saying, "Oh my God, you are too old. You don't have this. You don't have that." You just went for it. So
Yeah.
how was it in the beginning when you started to be like in the? Did you get any assistance from people around you, or was it like, yes, that's the right thing for you to do? I can't imagine you in any other role.
I never did date much. I've never had kids, never been married, and I didn't find guys that interesting, I guess. But I liked my books. So I have come across a number of people who've had near death experiences. And I actually, right now, I know three people who have had near death experiences. So as they talk about what their experience was in this near death situation, I'm hearing some music, so I don't know where that's coming from. Anyway, maybe that's heaven on earth. I started saying, in fact, on the wall here, I have some statements of
Mhm.
very common people come back with a message. So I started imagining standing in heaven with all the beauty and the music and the birds and animals. And I've heard flowers sing, they said. That was just so amazing. And then I thought, okay, I want to feel that in every cell of my body. And then what would it change here on earth? So I'm kind of getting more and more aware of how beauty is important to me. It's a recognition of awesome gift. The last 2, 3 years, I've paid a lot of attention to up here in Seattle. I drove Lyft for a year to pay off a debt, and I would tell people there's 1,000 shades of green in Washington, and there's so much trees and hedges and bushes and flowers. I live in an artistic kind of town, so I have been increasing my gratitude on all this green around us and the things that grow for free. What a blessing, the abundance of the things
Mm.
that grow around us. We've got mountains and we've got water, and I can see a ferry from my window here going across the Puget Sound. But to appreciate life, to appreciate the free gift. And I've been growing too is something, Silja, that makes a big difference. It's a journey. It's not exactly easy, but to learn to love myself. I need to love myself before I can really love Silja. And it's when that critical voice in our head all through life about, oh, they don't really want to hear from you. Or if you really knew me, you wouldn't love me because I don't love myself. And part of my recovery was to have the courage to speak up today because there's people coming behind me that I can show them it's possible to stick your neck out and live to tell about it. One of my favorite blocks is from Brene Brown, and she says the description of definition of vulnerability is the willingness to show up and be seen without any guarantee of the outcome. To me,
Mm.
that says sticking your neck out may, in fact, have some great rewards. I'll do what I can on my part. And something as simple as, are, are you originally from Spain? And starts a conversation and it starts seeing what we have in common. One of the things I'm certified in is knowledge management. And to me, knowledge management is I'll put out on the table what I know. Silja puts out on the table what she knows. And then the possibility of creating new knowledge happens. It's kind of a miracle. I see being vulnerable as opening myself to a miracle.
You're also being a big inspiration for other people then as an influencer and by putting yourself out there. But while you were going into this, did you have any limiting beliefs, any blocks to overcome, any kind of challenges, any like some kind of voices in your head saying like no, no? How did you overcome all this?
A little bit. Well, that reminds me of the time I was a teenager. Before I started school, I had an older brother and sister, and mom had me drill them on their flashcards, 3 plus 2 equals 5 kind of thing. Instead of just listening to them read the numbers, I thought, well, why not pay attention? And maybe I'll learn something here. And so by the time I started first grade, I actually knew my sister's second grade flashcards almost better than she did. And I got to skip second grade. How amazing was we moved to the farm, a 100-acre farm when I was 8. And so we had to clear the land of sagebrush, and dad planted some pinto beans and some wheat, and then he planted some apple trees and apricots and strawberries, raspberries, stuff like that. And eventually I had to milk cows and gather the eggs and stack hay as a 12, 14, 16-year old. The point I'm trying to say, that I was always large for my age, even back in first grade. And that was kind of one of the selling points about me being able to second grade, is that my size would fit in better with the grade ahead of me. I was always glad I was ahead of the people that, the class I started school with, because I was more mature. But by teenage years, they had started calling me Blue Elephant. My family, blue jeans, blue shirts, you're always dressed in farm clothes. This one dinner, they were teasing me so bad with this blue elephant thing. I decided to get up, and I didn't care to eat in that kind of atmosphere. Eating is usually pretty important to us. So I got up from the table, and dad made me come back, and he put his arm around me and said, you come by your height. I was taller than both my mom and dad. And he said, our parents were taller, nearly 6 foot tall. And so you come by your size legitimately. Well, that doesn't feel any better about being called Blue Elephant, but logically, it made some sense. And I sat back down and finished my dinner. I guess I was always self conscious about my size. And because of the incest that was going on, they say people either become very promiscuous in life going ahead, or they become obese. And I became obese. When I retired, I was still 245 pounds. That was a way of me feeling somewhat safe, because who would want to tease me and flatter me, at that size? Well, when I turned 70, I gave myself a birthday party because my family doesn't seem to celebrate me. I wrote a book during the pandemic, Fresh Courage in Retirement, Finding Purpose, Essence, and Fulfillment. And I gave it to my two younger sisters for Christmas present. Not one word has been said to me about my book. So I had to learn to celebrate myself. So I got out my pictures from over the years, and I was shocked at how I didn't look that heavy. I always felt that way about myself. That, like I say, if you really knew me, you wouldn't love me. That's very different now. Like every morning now, I ask God, what do I need to know today? How are you going to dance with me today? To me, a question of how you're going to dance with me opens the door to some expectations of something miraculous happening, or something fun or joyful, or, it's just a gift. Oftentimes it's meeting new people that I need to know, like Silja.
It's like, nowadays it's very common to talk about self love and limiting beliefs on the self development. When you were growing up, this was not, in so mainstream as it is right now, like knowing yourself, loving yourself. But you are also very good inspiration and example that it's never too late. Even if you start loving yourself at 70, it's never too late. You still have a lot of life ahead. And even if it's maybe one day of self love at the end of your life, it's still worth it. Because when you die, you will be loving yourself at least.
Yeah, there's nothing in my thoughts that I'm getting, well, a little bit lately. The last couple of months, it seems like I'm slowing down a little bit. But the myth that was going around at Boeing, my last job, they said a lot of people put off retirement because they know they'll be dead in 3 years. Oh, that hurt. It took a while for me to, like, 2, 3, 4 years to realize, oh yeah, if you come home to be a couch potato, it may take 3 years to die. The secret of retirement time, in fact, what drives me about retirement time is all this free time is untapped potential. Could be possible that you do with your time. I remember thinking at 14, I wonder what my potential is. How do I know what my potential is? Well, I wrote a course in May last year on volunteering. And I actually did a little bit of preaching in that course, but I got the feeling when I had it finished that it would change people. And here's why. When I was about 14, my mom had kind of suggested somebody needed some help. And I don't remember the situation, but I don't remember it as a neighbor or somebody at church or in town because we lived 20 miles from town. But she said, if you help somebody else or when you help somebody else, it makes you feel good too. It makes me feel good. Well, volunteering then is the secret to happiness. It could be for sure. But it sets in motion the law of reciprocity. When you bless someone else, the likelihood of someone else blessing you or them turning around and helping me in some way is possible. That vulnerability thing comes into play. Well, I've been delivering for the food bank to seniors about 3 years now, I think, 2 or 3 years. On my Queen of Courage, I've sometimes mentioned about when you do for others, that reciprocity could kick in. Well, this summer that happened, probably in September. I had commented on this lady that I'm delivering groceries to, and by her front door, there's a lavender bush, and I like to run my hand over the blossoms of the lavender and then smell them because it's just a treat. And she started pointing, and I thought, was she pointing to some other flowers maybe? No, it was her plum and prune tree that was overloaded with fruit, fresh fruit. And she actually went to her garage and got me a box so I could take home her generosity of fresh fruit. And I thought, see there's that law of reciprocity coming into play that I get blessed because I was helping her. So volunteering is great. Well, there's three principles about retirement that make such a difference. And one is that having a purpose makes your life longer. You're doing something that matters to you. You've got something that gets you out of the bed or out of the house. There's a meaning to your days. Another one is continuing to learn. When those flashcards started, that was starting to learn. I love a lifelong learner from a very young age. And it serves you so well, even in retirement. And then, let's see, what was the third thing? Keeping yourself social. Well, when you're doing for others, you're being social. Your social health is healthy, keeping it healthy. So I want you to not just take any volunteer job and say, oh, I got to do this because it'll make me socially happy, help me thrive. No, pick something that, well, try different things for one. Pick something feels you get it, gives you energy when it's the right match, that it tugs on that thriving spirit in yourself that, yeah, I can do this. One of my guests on the podcast I did was a gentleman that had been the AA president for our state for 6 years. He had this volunteering down to almost a science. He came on my program and told me 9 things that come from what you get from volunteering. The last one, he said, that took a little longer, I think, to develop. He would go around to senior living places and kind of do an advocacy situations. Are the residents getting their needs met? Are there things that they would like or have asked for that aren't being responded to? So he found this lady in one of the senior living places that never came down to the dining hall for her meals. He found out that she didn't have any teeth. She was embarrassed about that, of course. All she needed, what he did for her, was to be an advocate for getting her some dentures. And it changed everything about her life. So, what a good feeling that is to impact somebody else's life by some efforts that you could do for others. So, got any questions after all that?
So you are so vital. You are doing many things. You are volunteering, inspiring people, influencing people, doing the podcasts. But what's the general situation? What are people your age doing? What do you see
Well,
mostly?
yeah, something that I've been noticing that's showing up fairly frequently is that people kind of sit here and say, "Is this all there is?" Well, no. Okay, so I love to talk about possibilities and potential and courage. So if you look around, okay, well, and I actually put 6 courses along with my book out on the Great Discovery platform. And one of the things I put out there is a little book called What Makes Your Heart Sing. In fact, I have a block here. This is from a leadership book by John Maxwell. What makes your heart sing? Well, that speaks to what gives you joy. Have you forgotten what gives you joy? We forget about it when we've had to pay for the roof and the car and the education and the kids going to school and all that. What makes you cry? Well, that's what moves your heart. Um, it could be joy, but it could be something that somebody needs to do something about that. Well, another block I have is you'll know the next step once you take the first step. We often think that we have to, I don't know how to do that. It'd take me 10 years to do it. Well, take the first step. Um, then what makes me dream? Again, we might have lost track of where we left our dreams. And what makes you excel? Well, that's what makes me different from Silja. She's probably excels in an area that I had no idea could be done. And what makes me different? We got lectures as kids that our values were different from our neighbors, that we weren't allowed to dance, for example. And we got lectures about that. I even remember getting a lecture about it in 5th grade and having to do a skating lesson or something our whole class was doing. But yeah, I learned how to embrace my differentness because it makes me unique. Just like these little blocks are unique, I expressing my creativity, and I'm holding up one that says, "Have you forgotten who you are?" In retirement, that often happens. That's a line from the Lion King. I think one lion is saying to the other cub, Simba, "Have you forgotten that you're royalty?" Is what he was implying. Well, when we leave our jobs, when we don't have our business cards anymore, we don't know what our team and our task is. We forgot that we did graduate from college, or at least, have a skill that other people don't have. We forgot all the people we met in our career that we know still, and that has not changed. You're still that dynamite trombone player that you were in high school. You're still the lady that loves to paint with lots of color. And it's time to find that spark and put it together with your talent and give the world your uniqueness. Let's do this. Living from your inner spark to me is a little bit like heaven on earth. You want some of that?
Beautiful. Yeah. So once you know your spark, once you know the mindset has all been settled and you don't have the blocks anymore, how do you get from this mindset, from the thoughts and the plans to action? Is there like any specific transition or does it just happen?
Good question. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. I first learned my essence statement. I put it into fabric. I had it on a wall hanging, and I used to hang it behind me in the corner here. And I remember coming over and reading my essence statement 3 times one day. Oh, I turned around that third time and realized that when I lived from my core, what really matters to me, every day feels right. Every day, because I had started wondering, how would I know if I'm productive? There's no boss to keep me, to keep happy anymore. How do I know I'm productive? Does my day matter to anyone besides me? Somebody told me recently that some people feel like I never thought I'd get old, so I didn't plan, I didn't give retirement any thought, or I've got nothing else to do. Well, 3 year olds are pretty curious kids. If they want to play with your pots and pans behind the cupboard door, they're going to figure out a way to do it. They're going to figure out how to open that door. You can still figure out how to open the door to your energy and your thriving and your being a volunteer that makes the difference in other people's lives. Now, there are sites, I know two or three specifically here in the United States, but there's probably others around the world. And I put some of them in the appendix of my book. So I like to refer you to other books or websites or movies. The Intern movie was quite illustrative of being vulnerable with young people, learn from them, and young people learning from you. I remember the older gentleman teaching the CEO of the company about judgment and some of the people that were her top people. Yet she had to learn from him the balance of overworking and stressing yourself too much. There's possibility all around you. Just become curious of a 3 year old. And it is very important to make decisions and actions that align with that DNA that's inside. Exactly.
So basically, curiosity can also be the bridge between the plan and thinking and into action.
Yeah.
You get curious and then you just go and do stuff. You experiment. And also, I love a saying that I heard from Adam Roa, speaker, motivational coach, and he said, what would you do if you knew that you will fail anyway? So just go and do stuff because it doesn't matter if it's gonna be failing. You just go and do stuff. So
Learning and failing at the same time.
I just started like that new dance class this week, contemporary dance. I am a beginner here and I'm failing. It's in Spanish. I don't speak the language that much, but I'm happy to fail. It's just because also when I was starting any kind of new job positions, always I knew, okay, the first month, chill. I'm learning. It's okay to fail. And it's just experimenting and testing phase. Nobody's expecting you to be good. So that's why I love to have this beginner mindset. It's like, ah, I'm not expected to be good right now. I can just go and just find out what it's all about. Of course, I've also found myself when the process becomes like longer, I'm no more like a beginner anymore. I might start having some judgments about myself, but the first month I'm like, chill, I'm learning.
Well, judgment about yourself is a principle I learned too, and it did help me start losing weight. And it's simply telling myself I'm doing the best I know. What a difference that made. What a difference. Okay, I want to mention about dancing. Just in the last couple of weeks, I have been made aware of how civilizations over the centuries have used dance to mark a special moment or a ceremony or whatever. And it made me start feeling bad that that was kept from me. It was kept from me out of fear in those lectures about other people touching your body and moving you around and acting sweet to you or something, and taught me to be fearful about it. And it made me sad because I was not taught to embrace dancing as a ritual, perhaps in a healthy and important moment.
But now you're doing it because, like you said, every morning you wake up, it's like, how can I dance with myself today? So now it feels like you are inviting dance into your life. And I'm very connected with my body. So I love dance. For me, it always gets me out of this overthinking mind and it gets me into the body. I just move some kind of energy inside me, like physical and also emotional. And after this, everything just clicks into place often and I find the solution that I wasn't looking for. It just happens, just because you connect with the body, with hands with the body.
Yeah, yeah. I hadn't yet put together the fact that I ask every morning, how do you want to dance with me today? So it's opening up my spirit to be curious and how can I embrace that, little by little. I take the first step and then I'll know what the next step is.
So do you actually dance? Like physically move as well?
The only movement I do every day is for a walk. And while I'm on my walk, I like to take 4 biscuits with me and feed them to the dogs. And I also whistle at the crows. There's a lot of crows around my area. Besides whistling at the crows, if I whistle at the squirrels, that will make them run up the tree. That's kind of my game I do while I'm walking.
Yeah, very playful. It's like there's always room for playfulness. It doesn't matter what your age is. It's not just for children. We need to play as adults as well. I feel that for me right now, just going to a dance class, this is like also me being like playful. So I just choose to have it in my life. Or also like just traveling. That's also being playful. Just giving myself all kinds of experiences.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to choose to be playful with my dance. Okay, that loosens up the willingness to, and
Yeah, and so much is actually stored in the body as well. So movement is releasing it. The body keeps the score. There's also a book about it. I haven't read it, but I've heard so much about it. It's like, yeah, so much is stored inside the body, and you can just release it just to be more free. And if it happens at 70, okay, if it happens at 60, better. If you do it already when you're like 30, 20, but even better, but it's never too late, I feel.
so do you have still?
No.
No, okay. Because dancing with kids is kind of fun to do, right?
Might be, yeah. My sister has 2 children, so that could be like a thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how can people find you? You
Well,
have the book, you
yeah,
have
I do
the courage Instagram.
Instagram and
Hmm.
and Instagram. It's on Amazon. And my little blocks, like this is the one that's on the front of the book, are on Etsy, Etsy, Etsy. And I've got 200 or 300 out there. I've made probably 500 over my life. I have used this saying a lot. Never underestimate the power of a planted seed. I feel like I'm planting seed in your life as I share my story. And with all the green around here, if we don't plant the seed, I think the birds are planting seeds sometimes for us. But there's a book called The Shack. And a line that shows up often in the book is, I'm especially fond of you. God saying that to us. That's one way to embrace loving yourself, is realizing that God loves you already. Okay, so how can people find me? Etsy and Amazon. And then I do have a website. You can find it either under SharonRolph.com, SharonRolph.com. And I've got a lot of things on YouTube that you can like and share. I have a team working with me to set up Effortless Vitality as both on YouTube and on Facebook. So here's your encouraging curiosity and courage. And well, anyway, that I sometimes use them when I do my Instagram things. They're just 2-3 minutes as you watch those. But I am starting to think about going around and being a speaker at some of these senior living places and being able to, because a lot of baby boomers aren't on Facebook or LinkedIn, and to reach them, I need to be eyeball to eyeball. When I used to live in Dallas, Texas, one of my friends is saying she lives now really very, very close to a senior living place, and she's going to see about getting me to be a speaker there. And maybe I'd be going around the country once or twice a year to speak and inspire others to live and thrive in retirement from a purpose that matters to them.
Yeah, and I also feel that talking to younger generations, you can be the inspiration because we still have time to go. So I'm 36, so I still have time to get to where you are. I already see you. I'm like, okay, I want to be that kind of woman. When I'm 77, I want to, have vitality and just be inspiring people, not like going off to die.
Well,
So you
yeah,
are definitely an inspiration. So even for younger people, it's like, yes, this is where I want to get to. It's like meeting my future self, basically.
there's a young gal. You remind me of her a lot. I don't remember what country she was in. Her name was real unusual, but you will find her on some of my clips that my virtual assistant has made for me. Because she asked a question, kind of like, "What is life going to be like for me?" And part of my healing was realizing I can be more courageous for those coming behind me that don't yet have courage. And I remember kicking my chair in office meetings mentally and saying, I'll put out there not only for me, but for those others also in the room that aren't willing to speak their truth. And it takes somebody just a step ahead of you to show you the way, right?
True, very, very true. And it also sounds very exciting. Oh, you have an assistant. So it's like starting some kind of new business and having virtual assistant who is doing stuff for you because you're doing it in a smart way. You're not doing everything yourself. You're just asking for help. I think this is also a big thing. Asking
Yeah,
for help.
exactly. It's hard to do. I started meeting with a friend on the other side of town here about retirement. What was it like? We would meet every 3 or 4 months or so, and we still do that somewhat. And she's getting older now. And when I suggest we go to lunch, she suggests I pick her up and go to lunch. But that's still part of that friendship. Yeah.
Amazing.
Good
Okay,
job.
yeah, thank you so much for this inspiring conversation. And I hope that it inspires people of all ages. And of course, all your links, people can find them from the show notes on YouTube or from the description. So they can just go and click and get more of your magic that you also shared here in different shapes and forms. So thank you so much, Sharon, for this lovely conversation. Amazing.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. I love helping people think. And I've given you a lot to chew on today.
True. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.